Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel yet, please do. Here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, I have the lofty goal of eventually reviewing every single short story ever published by the master of sci-fi himself, Ray Bradbury. Today we are up to story number 72 of 100 in the collection These Stories of Ray Bradbury, which is called The One Who Waits from 1949. The way these reviews work is I give a brief synopsis of the action, then wrap things up by sharing some of my thoughts about what it all means. So, as for the synopsis, there is an entity waiting at the bottom of a well for 10,000 years. At last, after those years have passed, some men suddenly appear over the well, sort of looking down into the well, and they are humans just arrived on one of the first rockets from Earth. The entity manages to inhabit 3 of them over the next few hours. Each man dies, seemingly in accidents. The possession of the body is not agreeable to them, but the entity eventually touches the last 6 of them all at once and buries their own consciousness deep inside where they struggle to get out. But the humans themselves, they feeling drawn to the well where the entity has come from. They stare back down at it, peering. Eventually, they all fall in and die. And we end up back where we began, with the entity alone, dumb, looking up at the sky, but watching the next rocket as it comes in from Earth and waiting, always waiting. Yeah, so it is a bit of a sad, mournful little tale. It's a lot like most of Ray Bradbury's Martian stories. We're on a planet that is mostly dead, but it is haunted by its ghosts, by its long history, by the last few remaining mysterious entities, and you have to imagine it's what it must be like for an archaeologist or an early discoverer or explorer who is the first in thousands of years to find dead civilizations, sort of wonder what transpired here and sort of feel the weight of the ghosts and the history, and just sort of a strangeness, because it's how could something so big have existed and then disappeared completely. It's the story is also, though, about this entity is very much, I would say, Lovecraftian. One of the hallmarks of Lovecraft is this idea that we are insignificant to the thoughts of these far superior godly beings, these entities, these immortals, and we don't really matter, and that we are just a speck, mere insects to them. And it certainly has that kind of feel to it, like Lovecraft, but it's also interesting that this being doesn't seem to be malevolent. It's accidentally causing death to the new arrivals because of its curiosity and its loneliness and its need to get out of the well. It's a bit like, and this might be a stretch, but I think of like colonization, and yes, people do bad things to each other very intentionally, but you may also unintentionally bring a dangerous bug or a virus, or even insects or other invasive species, and you may irreparably harm an environment and its inhabitants, but not intentionally. I think there's a little bit of that, and it's as much as these men from Earth are explorers, this creature that has waited for 10,000 years is an explorer as well, but it's only seeking to explore just beyond the confines of its well. But it seems as if it eventually wants to go back home because it does leave their bodies. So there's a little bit of that dichotomy as well, where even explorers eventually grow tired of their travels and yearn for home and for the old and for the familiar. I'm very much reminded also of a episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, somewhere in the first couple of seasons, where they encounter an entity on a planet, and it's manifests as a sort of a black pool of like oil, and it kills Lieutenant Yar eventually. That creature was more malevolent, but it also had that idea of sort of not really understanding humans and that it's doing pain and evil, and sort of was caught up in its own oppressiveness of its having been stuck there and abandoned there for how many years, nobody knows. But overall, it's a very spare story, not a lot of meat on the bones, slightly has a poetic feel to it as well, but in its own way, it does still manage to feel a little bit profound, which is cool. You'll find yourself thinking about it long after you finish reading, but you won't entirely understand why, because it's not very specific. It's more about the moods and the atmospheres that Bradbury manages to lay out here in a very, very short span of time. All right, so that was The One Who Waits from 1949. Tune in again in a few days, and we will discuss Tyrannosaurus Rex from 1962, which will bring us up to story number 73 of 100 in the stories of Ray Bradbury, and up to Ray Bradbury Review 173 or 4 overall in this years-long journey to review all of the short fiction of Ray Bradbury. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep it creepy.